श्रीशुक उवाच अत्र सर्गो विसर्गश्च स्थानं पोषणं मुक्तयः मन्वन्तरे शनुकथा निरोधो मुक्तिरक्षयः.
Hare Krishna. Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of Manus, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and the Samam Bonam.
Text 2. दशमस्य विशुद्ध्यर्थं नवनम् इह लक्षणं वन्यन्ति महात्मनः श्रुतेनर्थेन चञ्जसा.
Translation. To isolate the transcendence of the Samam Bonam, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages.
Text 3. भूतमात्रेन्द्रियाधीयं जन्म सर्गा उदर्विता ब्रह्मण्य गुणा वैश्यमयाद् विसर्गा पौरुषा स्मृतः.
Translation. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga. Sorry, can I ask? I'm getting a chat message about translation. Can you hear the translation I'm reading?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Yes, we can hear you. After
Okay.
the words, you can read the translation.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, but I'm getting like few chat messages saying translation.
Yeah, what it means is that after the text, you are saying translation and then reading. So after the text, just the translation.
Okay.
We can
Thank you.
miss out this part. Yeah.
Text 4. स्थितिर्वैकुण्ठ विजयः पोषणं तद् अनुग्रह मन्वन्तराणि सद्धर्मा उत्थया कर्म वशानः.
The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work.
Text 5. Avataru nacharitam harishchasyanuvartinam pumsham isha katha prokta nanakhyano pabrimvitaha.
The science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees.
Text 6. Nirodho ashanyushayanam atmana sahashaktibihi muktirhitva natyarupam swarupena vyavastitihi.
The merging of the living entity along with his conditional living tendency with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable gross and subtle material bodies.
Abhashascha nirodhascha yato asti adhyapashyate sa ashayaha par brahma paramatmeti shabdyate.
The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the Supreme Source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the Supreme Fountainhead, the Absolute Truth.
Text 8. यो अध्यात्मिको अयं पुरुषः सो अश्वा इवधिदैविकः यस्तत्र भया विशेषः पुरुषो हि अधिभौतिकः.
The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adhidaivik. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adhibhautik person.
Text 9. Ekam ekatara bhave yada nopalabhamahe tritayam tatra yo veda sa atma swashraya.
All three of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter.
Text 10. Purusho andam vinirvidya yada shausa vinirgataha atmano ayanam madvichan apo ashrashit shuchi.
After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha Avatara, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodhaka.
Text 11. Tashva avatsit swashvistashu sahasram parivatsaran tena narayano nama yad apa purushotbhavaha.
That supreme person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the supreme Nar is known as Nara, and because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayana.
Text 12. Dravyam karma cha kalascha swabhavo jiva eva cha yad anugrahata shanti na shanti yad upekshaya.
One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time, and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all exist by his mercy only. And as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non existent.
Text 13. Eko nanatvam anvichan yogatalpat samutthitaha viryam hiranmayam devo mayaya vyasarjatridha.
The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol golden in hue through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone.
Text 14. Adidaivam athadhyatmam adibhutam iti prabhuhu athaikam paurusham viryam tridha vidyata tachrinu.
Just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the control entities, and the material bodies in the manner mentioned above.
Text 15. Antasarira akashat purushasya vichestataha ujhasaho balam jagne tatha prano mahan ashuhu.
From the sky, situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sense, energy, mental force, and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force.
Text 16. Anuprananti yam pranaha pranantam sarvajantushu apanantam apananti nara devam ivanugaha.
As the followers of a king follow their lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move, and when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities.
Text 17. Prane nakshipata shutri antara jayate viboho pipashato jakshatascha pranmukham niravidyata.
The living force being agitated by the Virat Purusha generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened.
Text 18. Mukhatashtalu nirbhinnam jihva tatropajayate tato nana raso jagne jihvayayo adhigamyate.
From the mouth, the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tastes came into existence so that the tongue can relish them.
Text 19. Vivakshor mukhato bhumno vanirvagyaritam tayo jale chaitasya suchiram nirodha samarjayata.
When the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity, fire, was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended.
Text 20. Nashike niravidyatam dodhuyati nabhasvati tatra vayur gandhavaho grinau nashi jigrikshataha.
Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifested.
Text 21. Yadatmani niralokam atmanam cha didrikshataha nirbhinne hi yakshinitasya jyotischakshurgunagraha.
Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision, and the object of sight all became manifested.
Haribol.
Thank you so much, Partha Prabhu and Anushri Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for that enthusiastic recitation. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. We will continue with the discussion. First, we'll recite prayers together so that we seek blessings of Acharyas and the bona fide Parampara and Lord Shri Krishna. So we can discuss something today which is beneficial to all of us and mainly for my purification. I seek your blessings also. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimirandhasya Gnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Devi Pranamami Hari Priye वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhate girim yatkrupatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Krishna Chaitanya Ishwaram Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी ततां प्रसङ्गान् मम वीरसंविदो भवन्ति हृत्कर्णरसायना कथाः तज्जोषनादाशपवर्गवर्त्मनि श्रद्धारतिर्भक्तिरनुक्रमिष्यते Welcome to chat chapter today. I welcome all the wonderful devotees to our Bhagavatam discussion. We are on the 10th chapter and today's verses are 17, 18, 19. So I thought we will quickly go through from beginning the summary up to today's verse because 17 to 30, these verses are basically creation procedure. It's a little bit technical, but if we understand the formula, then all the rest of the verses we will be able to understand. It all follows the same formula there. So I thought we will discuss first from the beginning about this chapter. So this chapter starts with wonderful verses. First two verses, they discuss the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. They are mentioned in verse number 1 and 2. And these, they give 9 topics which are spoken so that we can understand the 10th topic, which is Ashraya. This can be understood properly if we understand the first 9 topics. So, for example, we know here it rains quite often. When it rains, we carry umbrella. The umbrella gives us shelter. In the same way, the first 9 topics are like being under this umbrella of this 10th topic. All 9 topics are under the umbrella of 10th topic, which is Ashraya. So, by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we should come to the conclusion that we have to take exclusive shelter of Krishna, and he is the Ashraya Tattva, and that is the ultimate conclusion of Bhagavatam. So, the third verse discusses Sarga. Sarga is primary creation, as all of you know. It is carried out by Mahavishnu and it is creation up to the stage of ingredients of manifestation of the universe. Whatever creation is done till then is by Mahavishnu, and that is primary creation called Sarga. And mainly it is discussed in Canto 2 and Canto 3, chapter 5 to 11. Now, one more thing we need to understand is that all the topics they come in all the cantos. It is not like that only Sarga will come in these cantos that we are going to mention. It is not like that. All the topics come in all the cantos, but particularly one topic comes predominantly more. It is present more dominantly, that particular topic. That's why we say Canto 2, Canto 3, Chapter 5 to 11 discusses more of Sarga, but it has all the other topics as well. Thus, Bhagavatam is resplendent with all these topics, hence it's called Mahapurana, right? Because every canto has all the topics. But predominantly, one topic is more. Then comes third verse talks about Visarga. And as everyone knows, it is the secondary creation done by Brahma. And mainly it comes in Canto 3, Chapter 12, up to Canto 5, Chapter 15. Thereafter, verse 4 discusses Thanam. Thanam is positioning of different living beings. Relevant to their positions, they are placed in different planets. For example, Devtas, human beings, Vidyadhara, Kim Purusha, Kinnara, etc. And then there is 14 planetary systems created from Brahmalok down to Patalok, and that's where the position of different living beings are placed in those different planets. It is in Canto 5, chapter 16 to 27. Thereafter, Poshanam is discussed, which comes in Canto 6. Poshanam is maintenance and protection. Supreme Lord protects all his devotees, and even if one deviates from proper consciousness, Lord protects. Then Canto 6 main pastimes of Poshanam are that of Ajamil, Indra, Chitraketu, who all got protection from the Lord. Then Manvantara, that comes in Canto 8. Manvantara is reign of different Manus, who are the progenitors of mankind, and they are created by Brahma. So they are part of Visarga, and they populate the entire universe. That will come in Canto 8. Then Uti. Uti, mainly discussed in Canto 7. Uti means inclination. For example, auspicious inclinations example is Prahlad Maharaj, who gives rise to bhakti or auspiciousness. And for example, Hiranyakashipu, he gives rise to asuric tendencies, right? So that will come in Canto 7. Thereafter, verse 5 of this chapter talks about Ishanu Katha, which means science of God, descriptions of Lord and his devotees, mainly in Canto 9. Then Nirodha. Nirodha is winding up, annihilation or pralaya of the material universe. And as we all know, there are 4 types of pralaya: Nitya pralaya, Naimitika pralaya, Prakritika pralaya, and Atyantika pralaya. So Nitya Pralaya is the constant destruction that goes on. For example, a flower will fade tomorrow, which is fresh today. Even us, our body, right? As we grow old, degeneration takes place, and then slowly one dwindles and dies. That is Nitya Pralaya. It is happening all the time. But unless one fast forwards something, one cannot understand how this Nitya Pralaya is happening, because it is very slow to our senses to observe. But tomorrow, when the flower fades, we know that every second it was deteriorating. Then second is Naimitika Pralaya. This happens at the end of day of Brahma. Brahma lives, as we all know, for 100 years, and each day, and at the end of Brahma's day, all the planets in the universe, they go back into Garbhodakshai Vishnu along with Brahma. Then Prakritik Pralaya. This is at the end of Brahma's life. At his 100 years, everything goes back into Mahavishnu's body. And that's when he inhales. So that is complete annihilation. And fourth is Atyantika Pralaya. And this is at the individual level. When a person's false ego is destroyed, he will go back to spiritual world. So this refers to one person, his liberation. And that is the ultimate destruction at individual level. So thereafter, the topic is Mukti, liberation, and we will study these through Uddhava Gita in Canto 11. And last is Ashraya Tattva, Canto 10. And we all know supreme shelter is Krishna. That is the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Bhakti is the way to achieve Krishna Prema. That is the goal. And his pastimes are elaborately discussed in 10th Canto. That is Ashraya Tattva. So these are the 10 topics of Bhagavatam. And thereafter, verse 8 and 9 talks about 3 topics actually. I will show the chart. Here we can see in this chart, can you see Adi Daiva, Adhyatma, and Adi Bhuta? So verse 8 and 9 basically discusses this, that Supreme Lord or Paramatma, he is the shelter of all the universe, and he is the shelter of Adhyatmika. So what is Adhyatmika? Adhyatmika is nothing but mind and 10 senses, sense devtas. So these are the subtle senses, pranas and 10 senses here, Adhyatmika. right? Adideva, Adhyatma, and Adibhuta. So, Adhyatmika subtle senses, Adideva is the sense deities, and Adibhautika is the gross senses. So, Adi Devika is sense devta and mind. Adi Bhautika is gross senses. What are the gross senses? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then five tanmatras. And then Adi Bhuta, Adhyatma, Prana, and 10 senses. So, verse 8 and 9 says that uh, Lord is the shelter of all these senses. And even in Canto 2.5, when we had studied the manifestation of Virat Rupa and 23 elements were discussed, all of this manifested from the Lord, as we can see from top Karana Dakshay Vishnu, right? He manifests, Mahavishnu manifests from, on top is Lord Krishna and all the Chaturvihas, then Sankarshana, Narayana, and then Mahavishnu. So, thus we know Krishna is the shelter, everything manifests from him. And we know in Bhagavad Gita 10:42, Krishna says that by his Amsha, he pervades the entire world. And it should be understood that Krishna is the shelter of Paramatma, who is the shelter of the Jiva. Thus, Krishna, as the supreme Ashraya, is established. If we think the one who's seated in our heart is Paramatma Shirodakshay Vishnu, whose origin is Garbhodakshay Vishnu, whose origin is Mahavishnu, whose origin is Krishna. So you can say Paramatma is nothing but a part and parcel coming from Krishna, basically. So then going forward, the 10th verse mentions that Mahavishnu enters each universe as Garbhodakshay Vishnu, as we can see here. This is one, first of all, when Mahavishnu breathes out all the from his pores, so many universes come out. And when Mahavishnu enters each of this bubble, that time there was nothing there, it was empty. Then with his own perspiration, he fills half the universe with his perspiration, which is nothing but Garbhodaka ocean, and then Lord lies there as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And from his navel a lotus sprouts and Brahma takes birth on top. And then through that stem, all the 14 planetary systems are there. Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. And then there is all the bottom 7 planets, Atala, Vitala, Satala, Talatal, Mahatal, Rasatal, Patala. Then Earth planet and all the top 7 planets, Satyaloka being the top planet where Brahma resides. So basically, that's the 10th verse that Mahavishnu enters each universe. And then verse 11 is talks about all the 3 Vishnus are called Narayan. Which 3 Vishnus? Karana Dakshay Vishnu, Garbho Dakshay Vishnu, and Shiro Dakshay Vishnu. They are all called Narayan. The Supreme Personal is he is not impersonal, therefore, he is distinctively a Nara, a person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayan. Thereafter, verse 12 discusses about Dravya, Kala, and Karma. So basically, universe characteristics of universe are non-different to Lord Narayan, and they are Dravya. Dravya is the elements: earth, water, air, fire, ether. Jiva, living beings. Kala is time. Karma, again, karma is all the accumulated karmas of all the jivas, karmic reactions. So here it is Karana Dakshay Vishnu. He Here we can see that the Kala and Jivas and Karma, all of that, Supreme Lord's he will glance on some total of material energy Maya, and he infuses it with time, Kala, and destiny Karma, Jivas Karmas, all the Jivas accumulated Karmas, and their nature, Swabhava, and thereby he agitates it. And that agitated equilibrium is called Pradhan. Here it is. And when that Pradhan produces Mahat Tattva, when it is in Sattva Guna, dominated by mode of goodness, it is Mahat Tattva. But when that Pradhana is dominated by Rajoguna, it is Sutra Tattva. So that is in following verses, it talks about Sutra Tattva. So what is Sutra? This is what it is. When it is in Rajoguna, it becomes Sutra Tattva. Rajoguna basically is action. So everything is put into action, the universe. And then when that Ahankara mode predominates in Tamas, then from Ahankara, three more modes come: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So even within this material world, if some devotee is really nicely uh, doing only sadhana and everything, still that goodness mode comes into under ahankara. Unless one takes to the bhakti, pure bhakti of Krishna, then he can transcend beyond this goodness into pure goodness. Then he can actually three modes come out of ahankara and into the sattva here, the pure goodness. So that's basically all the following verses up to, I think, verse number 15, 16. Yes, Ahankara is mentioned till 15, 16. And thereafter, our today's verse number 17. So 17 verse to 30 is creation procedure, which is explained everything here in the chart, all the verses 17 to 30. If we first understand how, then we will read all the purports, they are small, and then we will come to this chart so we can understand nicely. So can you see the Veda base now?
No, Mataji, just a chart.
Oh, okay, one moment. Then, right. Now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So verse 17. Yeah, this is. प्राणेनाक्षिपताक्षुत्रित् अन्तराजायते विभुः पिपासतो जक्षतश्च प्राणमुखं निरभिद्यत. The living force, being agitated by the Virat Purusha, generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Purport. The process by which all living beings in the womb of the mother develop their sense organs and sense perceptions appears to follow the same principles in the case of Virat Purusha, the sum total of all living entities. Therefore, the supreme cause of all generation is not impersonal or without desire. The desires for all kinds of sense perception and sense organs exist in the Supreme, and thus they take place in the individual persons. This desire is the nature of the Supreme Living Being, the absolute truth, because he has the sum total of all mouths. The individual living entities have mouths. Similarly, with all other senses and sense organs, here the mouth is the symbolic representation of all sense organs, for the same principles apply to the others also. Okay, so here the living force being agitated by Virat Purusha generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened. So let's see what is Virat Purusha again. We come back to this Virat Purusha again in 10th chapter. We studied about Virat Purusha in first chapter of Bhagavatam and second chapter 2.1, second canto, this canto, first and second chapter. Both chapters we studied Rupa, right? And Virat Purusha and Virat Rupa, same thing. So at that time, if you remember that we have seen this description of Virat Rupa and what was the purpose there. So if you remember at that time that Virat Rupa was the object of the meditation of Ashtanga Yogi, right? The Dharana Shraya of the yogi who is seeking liberation, he meditates on the Virat Purusha. Why? Because one who cannot perceive Lord Krishna through his senses, which are limited, which are material, they cannot reach the spiritual Lord. So they have difficulty believing in something that cannot be perceived by their senses. So they put their faith in something they can see, touch, and perceive: the trees, the mountains, the air, the sky, the rivers, the oceans. And thus they understand that this material universe, the form of the material universe, is nothing but the gross material form of the Supreme Lord Himself. But at least they are able to perceive it, so they focus their meditation on this Virat Purusha, who is a temporary form. Why? Because we just saw the different pralayas, that this material universe will be annihilated at one point, right? So this is definitely temporary, but at the same time, it is a bona fide form. Why? Because we know this is Lord's energy. We have seen from the creation chart, everything that emanates for this world to enact comes from the Lord. We saw from every single dust particle to the biggest thing, the jivas and also the material things comes from the Lord. So this is a bona fide representation of the Supreme Lord. Yogi meditates on it, and this Virat Rupa description came in first and second chapter of Canto 2. And there the purpose was, he was the object of meditation of Ashtanga Yogi. By fixing his Dharanashraya on that, this yogi still has material desires. If he didn't have, then he will liberate. But with material desires, he still focuses on this. And we had seen all the Ashtanga yogis, right, from Yama, Niyama, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, all that. And that's how he liberates. So that was the first description. Second description comes in the sixth chapter of second canto. There Virat Rupa description came to prove that Supreme Lord is cause of everything in the entire universe, the chart, and he is the cause of material and effective cause of everything. And Garbhodakshay Vishnu's limbs, they provide the ingredients of the universe. That is in the sixth chapter, where we have seen ears, eyes, skin, nose, everything, all the limbs of the Lord is all the different planets, the planetary systems. And then now in this chapter, 10th chapter, and specifically this verse explains that another description of Virat Rupa has come. And this time, what is the purpose of this Virat Rupa description? Here, the purpose is to show that the Lord's desire is the cause of all the senses and the sensual functions of all the living beings, that is, us. So we have senses, we have desires, and the cause of this desire, the root cause, roots are within Lord's desire. Because Lord desires, we desire. Lord desire to see, we desire to see. Lord desire to eat, Virat Rupa, we desire to eat, like that. And how? Because Virat Rupa or universal form is the aggregate of all the living beings in this world. If you imagine like all the living beings, its aggregate together is Virat Rupa. And all the senses of Virat Rupa are considered the source of senses of all the living beings. We know, right? Our senses came from the Lord as well. So Lord is the cause, He is the source of our senses, our sensual desires. And that's how here Srila Prabhupada explains that we desire because the Lord desires. The desires for all kinds of sense perception and sense organs exist in the Supreme. Because they exist in the Supreme, they take place in the individual person. The desire is the nature of the Supreme Living Being, the absolute truth, because He has the sum total of all the mouths. So if you think of all the living beings' mouths together is the mouth of the Virat Rupa. And all the senses of all the livings being together, the aggregate sum total is the sense of Virat Rupa. Like that, for every sense, mouth, ears, eyes, nose, and all the desires of eating, walking, sleeping, defending, everything comes from the desire of the Supreme Lord, and He provides. So basically, even if you see that in the first canto, third chapter, we have seen different. Uh, After explaining all the different Leela avatars, there is a question, right? That the verse is Ete Chamsa Kala Pumsa Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. So at that time we know Krishna is source of all the spiritual forms, and all the Leela avatars were discussed. So at that time the question was raised that if we discuss so many forms of the Lord, what about the Virat Rupa form of the Lord? Because we discussed the spiritual form, so what is this form, the universal form? And is that not an incarnation of Krishna? And is it not spiritual? And the answer was in 32nd and 33rd verse, and again in this chapter 34 and 35th verse. The answer is that, like, we have three bodies. We have gross body, which we can see, right? Or it's made of all the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. Inside this, there is a subtle body which is we cannot see, mind, intelligence, and ego. And inside that is the soul. So it's the soul, then it is the subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego, and the gross body. In the same way, Lord Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the soul of the universe. He is completely spiritual. But Lord also has a gross material form, and that is this universe. And He also has a subtle material form, which is inconceivable, which one cannot see, and there is not much explanation about that. But the gross material form of the Lord is this universe. Like we have gross body, Lord has gross material body, which is this universe, which will be annihilated at some point. But the super soul of the universe, who is lying in the Garbhodakshai Vishnu, the Garbhodaka ocean, is the spiritual form, and the material gross form is the Virat Rupa. So that is the answer. Thus, Lord also has subtle and gross material forms, and this material universe is considered Lord's material gross form: mountains, rivers, planets, everything. And behind this gross material form, there is subtle material form, which is invisible. And Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the spiritual personality in this universe. But main thing to understand through Bhagavatam and all this discussion is that a sincere devotee who is really trying to understand, who has some knowledge, some advancement, he will ignore both gross and subtle material form of the Lord, and he will surrender to supreme spiritual Shyam Sundar form of the Lord as Krishna. And basically that is the essence. Even if we don't understand the technical parts and Virat Purusha, then that is fine, as long as we understand that the source of all the gross and material forms of the Lord is the spiritual Lord Krishna, and He is our Ashraya Tattva, then that's all we need to understand. So then we will come to verse 18 and 19 we will read, and then we will look at the diagrams in the slide. So text 18. मुखतस्तालु निर्भिन्नं जिह्वा तत्रोपजायते ततो नानारसोऽग्नग्ने जिह्वया योऽधिगम्यते. From the mouth the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this all the different tastes came into existence so that the tongue can relish them. The gradual process of evolution suggests the explanation of the controlling deities Adidaiva, because Varuna is the controlling deity for all relishable juices. Therefore, the mouth becomes the resting place for the tongue, which tastes all the different juices of which the controlling deity is Varuna. This suggests, therefore, that Varuna was also generated along with the development of the tongue. The tongue and the palate, being instrumental, are Adibhutam, or forms of matter. But the functioning deity, who is a living entity, is Adidaiva. whereas the person undergoing the function is Adhyatma. Thus, the three categories are also explained as to their birth after the opening of the mouth of the Virat Purusha. The four principles mentioned in this verse serve to explain the three main principles, namely Adhyatma, Adidaiva, and Adibhutam, as explained before. Okay, so this needs some explanation, and we will go through the chart to study this. Just let me open the slides. Okay. So basically here what this verse is saying, verse 18, is that Virat Purusha, Virat Rupa, he desires to eat or speak, etc. Right? So first is desire. We had already discussed this in 6th chapter, but here one more thing is added, which is the desire. So firstly, he desired, say for example, to eat. From that desire, gross sense organ takes place. Gross sense organ is Adibhuta, right? Whereas, let's have a look in the words, Adibhuta, right? So Adibhuta is gross sense organ. Okay, let's take an example that Lord desired to see an object. Then that gross sense organ would be eyes. Okay. Then subtle sense organ develops, which is chakshu. Behind the eyes, what is not visible to us, which is the subtle sense organ, is chakshu, right? And for the person to be able to see the object, even sense devtas as- permission is required, and the sense devta for the eyes is sun god, right? Surya Dev. So, four things. First, desire to see. Second, for that you need gross organ, which is eyes. Thirdly, subtle sense organ, chakshu. Fourthly, the devta, sense devta, who is sun god, required. And fifthly, an object is required to see. For example, I am watching a clay pot. Then I am looking at the clay pot is there, object, sense object, desire, gross organ, eyes, subtle sense organ, chakshu, and the devta of that senses is Surya Dev. I hope this gives clarification. And also in the chart, for every single desire, there is a sense devta, gross organ, subtle organ, everything is, and tan matras are explained. So for that, we will go to the chart. Here. So say for example, our verse number 17 is 17 says to drink and eat. So for that, gross sense organ is tongue. Subtle sense organ is called jiva. The sense devta who is watching this sense function is Varuna, and the sense object or gross element is taste plus water, right? Then verse 20, Lord desires to smell. Remember here, the Lord's desire refers to the aggregate total of all the living beings who are part and parcel of Virat Rupa. So, desire is to smell, then the gross organ required is Nasika, nose, subtle sense organ required is Grana, and the sense devtas for smell is Ashwini Kumaras, and the sense object and gross element is smell plus earth. The smell emanates from earth, like that. Even to speak, the gross organ is Mukham, subtle sense organ is Vak, the Devta is Agni Dev, Vahnir, and the object is speech. Like that, for every sense function, there is a gross sense, or there is a desire, gross sense organ, subtle sense organ, sense devta, sense object, and gross element. Like that, it is all nicely mentioned here. So that is the verse, and we will read the last verse. विवक्षोर्मुखतो भुम्नो वह्निर्वाग्व्याहृतं तयोः Jale chaitasya suchiram nirodha samajayata. When the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended. The peculiarity of the gradual development of the different senses is simultaneously supported by their controlling deities. It is to be understood, therefore, that the activities of the sense organs are controlled by the will of the Supreme. The senses are, so to speak, offering a license for the conditioned souls who are to use them properly under the control of controlling deity deputed by the Supreme Lord. One who violates such controlling regulations has to be punished by degradation to a lower status of life. Yes, so this is the law of the nature, right? That when someone violates any rule, then obviously they will be punished for their own reformation. Because remember, Krishna loves everyone. Even when he punishes the demons, it is out of love because Lord is impartial. Everyone is equal to him. He loves everyone. But if someone is violating something, then they need to come back to the right path. And for that, their reformation or purification happens through punishment. So consider, for example, the tongue and its controlling deity Varuna. The tongue is meant for eating, and men, animals, and birds each have their different tastes because of different licenses. The taste of human beings and that of the swine are not on the same level. The controlling deity, however, awards or certifies a particular type of body when the particular living entity develops a taste in terms of different modes of nature. If the human being develops taste without discrimination, as does the swine, then the controlling deity is certainly certified for the next term to award him the body of a swine. Now, see here, if a person is fortunate to be in a human's body, but even being in a human body, he desires to eat like animals, like hogs. Then, what that controlling deity does is that according to his desire, he will end up in a suitable body to be able to eat like a hog or a swine. So, it is not the controlling deity's fault, but it is the desire of that particular human being wanting to eat abominable things, then he will get in the next birth the suitable body so that he can taste the things that he wanted to eat, which is a swine or a hog, because that's what he desired. The swine accepts any kind of foodstuff, including stools, and a human being who has developed such indiscriminate taste must be prepared for a degraded life in the next life. Yes, because the main advantage of being human being is discrimination. That is the main rule, that we have to discriminate from good and bad, what is right for me and what is wrong. Eating prasadam is the right thing. Eating non vegetarian or abominable meat and other things is wrong. So, if we cannot discriminate and if we just go for any taste, then we are degrading into the lower species of life. In the next life, he will get a degraded life and a body suitable, and that will give him that taste. Such a life is also God's grace because the conditioned soul desired a body like that for perfectly tasting a particular type of foodstuff. If a man gets the body of a swine, it must be considered the grace of the Lord because the Lord awards the facility. After death, the next body is offered by superior control, not blindly. So nothing happens by chance, basically. That's what is here. It is God's grace. Okay, he got that body, but then later on, he finishes that birth by some purification, some punishment. He may get a chance to come up in life, and everything is happening by superior control. Nothing is by chance, as we have always heard that not a leaf moves without the sanction of the Lord. So everything is Lord's grace. But basically, it all depends on our how we use our free will. end of the day. Yes, there are modes, there is a time factor, there is association, who we associate with, and at the same time, we know Krishna doesn't want forced love. That's why he has given us free will. He wants us to go to him by us making that choice. He does not want to wave a magic wand and say that, okay, everyone go into the sattva mode, goodness mode, and come to me, you all. That is not how he wants. He says, these are the rules laid down. You are in the material world. You follow the rules and live accordingly. I love everyone equally. There is no partiality. But at the same time, it is your choice whether you want to live as per the rules and regulations of the Shastra, and if there is any punishments coming, how you take it is also very important. Whether we see it as the mercy of the Lord that we got this difficult time in life, then that is just a token. I could have gone through a major something, but something small came to me. That is also by the mercy of the Lord. So it depends if we apply that verse in 10th canto, Tattenu Kampam Susamikshamano Bhunjana Evatma Kripam Vipakam Ridvag Vapubhir Vidadhan Namaste Jivete Yor Mukti Padesa Dayabhak. So that I am bearing my own karmic reaction, Lord. This is not your fault. I am to blame. I am going through because I did something. I'm simply getting the reaction. So let me go through this nicely as your mercy, and then such a person is eligible for liberation. Krishna will definitely shower mercy on such a person who has this kind of vision towards life, basically. So yes, we are in Kali Yuga. Things are difficult, but more degradation will take place as time goes. And as we know, the modes also operate early in the morning. It is sattva. Then slowly, afternoon we are little bit active, rajoguna. Then later on, as the day goes, our energies deplete, and we don't want to do much. That's why in our sadhana practices, they say wake up early in the morning and do all the spiritual practices. And that is the way, because that practice done in the morning will help us to go through the entire day, whatever difficulties come. Because I mean, I'm speaking for my own purification. Speaking is easy, but following is extremely difficult. But the more we repeatedly read Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, repeat, read, hear, stay in devotees association. That's why wonderful Janmashtami festival is coming, and everybody is so busy in so many various services. So why all this? Basically, the purpose is to spiritualize our identity, our material body purification, try come closer to Krishna, and become dear to devotees, help them gain their blessings, because we cannot go to Krishna directly, we can only go through his devotees. So if we please them, then hopefully one day Krishna will be pleased with us through their blessings. So through studying this Virat Rupa, to be honest with you, I don't completely understand all the technical topics either. And I relish more when it is the part when we are glorifying so many beautiful shlokas and we get to discuss about Krishna's pastimes. That is more appealing to me. But today these verses were given to me, so please forgive me if I made any mistakes. But whatever I could understand, yatha dhitam, yatha mati, yatha shrutam, I tried. But if you have anyone want to add anything, please go ahead, and I seek your blessings. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. हरे कृष्ण. If you have any realizations, anything I missed, and if you want to enlighten us, please go ahead, or any corrections, or we can end. Okay, fine. I can't say anything as it is. I hope everybody is there. Or I was just speaking to myself. I don't know. Okay, so thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for
Thank
the
you, Mataji,
wonderful
for the
class.
wonderful class. Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Krishna
Dandavat.
Hare
Mataji,
Krishna.
thank you.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Mataji, thank
Krishna,
you.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Very nice class. Thank you. Hare Krishna.